there's a paper out there on the internet that actually tells all about the rotation system. If you Google Magimetric, you can find them. And what we discovered was when we start playing with this rotation system, in this first Industrial League team, we start winning about half the games, right? We went from a team that won hardly anything to a team that was respectable.
Right. We didn't think when we did this, it was for making the playing time more equitable,
right?
Or at least to say that at a minimum, if you were showing up and we had like 9 players show up for a game, you would get to play 10 minutes, which was 1/4 of the game.
Right.
That's worth showing up for.
So what we didn't really expect was that we'd win more games. And that's why we think that this rotation thing is so important, because we won a lot more games. And I'm going to tell you the statistics about that. I wasn't keeping track of how many wins and losses we really had in the first few years that we used it. We used it in the Industrial League that VSI was part of.
Right.
Then we used it in the Mountain Park
League, yes.
League.
Yes.
And then actually
we won the championship with, by the way.
That's right. And I became the coach of a Winder Barrow church league, in that we used it 1 year, a little bit there. I wasn't the coach, but the other coach was amenable to it, and we won. We won 2 games and we lost 2 games, but people complained so much. Let's say this about that. When a lot of people do not want to be measured on results.
Yes.
So it gets a lot of resistance. The whole thing about they're going to measure the results of players. Okay, people go cry and go home. But that's one of the reasons your team gets better, because the people that cry and go home really didn't need to be helping you on your team.
Yes, they weren't helping you much. They probably weren't helping you enough to...
Right. So the rotation, what was so neat about it, so this first year we tried to use it in church, we only used it for 4 games. We had a 12-game season that time, and we went 0-8 after we stopped using it. Then I became the coach and recruited Jeff as a player.
Right, yes. I wasn't there for the first season, but you didn't tell them that, okay, you used it for the first 4 games, and you were 2-2. What was the record when they started crying? Yes.
0-8. We went 0-8.
0-8 after that. So 500.
Then
500 record with that.
First of all, we became a much stronger team. Jeff was a really good basketball player, but when I was a coach, it was pretty much we had Keith for a while. Keith was excellent. He was the older coach. He kind of dropped out, but we won a championship with Keith.
Yes.
Great player, Keith. And then his younger son, joined the team, and along with a lot of his high school kids.
A lot of his young friends, yes.
So for a lot of years, it was just 2 old guys and a bunch of high school players.
Yes.
That was our team.
Yes.
And we were not the best athletic team. There was one team full of ringers. There was the perennial champions, except for 1 year when we beat them.
Yes.
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 Okay. But we were 8-2 2 seasons. We were 7-3 3 seasons, and we're 6-4 1 season, using the rotation system. And then we had pretty much the same team. We did lose Cody, which is a good player. But at the end of this, we were getting old, and we stopped using the rotation system and the Magimetric.
Well, we stopped coaching.
We stopped coaching. We
stopped coaching. I'd done my time coaching.
So what was our record then?
Yes, the season that we stopped coaching and the young kids were running the team and totally abandoned the rotation system. Our record was 1-9.
Well, one of the reasons it was 1-9 is they weren't playing Jeff. Jeff was still, if not the strongest player, at least the second strongest player on the team. He should have been playing 30-plus minutes a game. You're playing, 18 minutes a game?
Certainly less than 20, probably.
And then maybe
like
2/3 way through the season, you didn't even come.
No, it's not worth it. I mean, I also was the one who traveled the most to make it to the games.
Right.
So it wasn't really worth my time
once we were
to come out
5.
here. Once and then it. I wasn't upset about it. It's just that I didn't think it was.
I thought it was kind of cool. So the rotations. Let me tell you, the first year that we did, the guy that was our 3rd leading scorer at 9 points per game, he went to the very bottom, and then he went off the team. So all of a sudden, we went from 11-person team down to a 10-person team. So we actually were running. Usually, one person couldn't make the game, so we were running a 9-person rotation, which was pretty close, and we were about a 500 team. Another statistic I'll tell you about. We had this guy. And his name was, who's the guy that used to dribble into the double team all the time?
Ryan?
No. The very first year.
Oh, Carlos.
Carlos.
Yeah.
This guy used to be a high school stud. You could tell that he used to have skills, but he had gained weight.
Yeah.
And he used to dribble through double teams. He used to, in his mind, he could still dribble through the double teams. It was very terrible. And
He didn't fit through the double teams as well
No.
as he used to.
so if you look at a rotation, we're going to show you a 9-person rotation here. A 9-person rotation. If you notice this 9-person rotation, I've optimized this one to be what I think is a pretty close to optimal 9-person rotation. We actually used rotations that were a little bit more equitable to the bottom people, that might give the bottom people a little bit more playing time. This rotation has 32 minutes, 32 minutes, 30 minutes, 26, and 22. So the top 5 players are getting, I don't know what percentage that is. I'll figure it out later, but
Yeah.
probably 70% of the minutes. That's my guess. Now, we might have used a rotation that was like 65% because you could have been giving the, 6th best player. But what Carlos did is he worked himself out of we called it the finishing 5. And the reason we always end it with the best 5 players was so if we had a blowout going on, like we're getting blown out,
Yes.
or somebody else was getting blown out, we could substitute, and I'm going to show the 9-man rotation with a blowout. We can substitute the bottom people, and all of a sudden, instead of just getting 10 minutes, the worst player on the team is getting 16 minutes.
Right.
So it's a system where if we had to be competitive, we'd close with the 5 best players. So there wasn't any kind of, hey, it'd be a really great idea if we didn't play all our best players at the same time. Had nothing to do with that. All we were trying to do was give the people that paid the money more playing time.
Right.
And they deserve more playing time if we wanted to have a good chance to win.
Yes.
But it was so great because the way that in the years that we did it, I can only remember one game where we lost the lead in the last 6 minutes.
Yeah, I think we were only up by 1 point.
We were up by 1
We were
point.
up by 1 point going
Yes.
into the last 6 minutes.
And we
I
lost
think
it.
we lost.
Like 2 points or something.
Yeah, it was very close down to the end.
But
So-
we never lost a game if we had the lead 6 minutes into it. Because we're finishing with our 5 best players on the court. The other team's never seen our 5 best players on the court at the same time.
Right. Never seen that whole lineup.
That's right. And here's the super cool things about this rotation that we did not figure out.
Yeah, didn't anticipate it.
Is we're changing up the lineup. The lineup is getting changed up randomly. Like 3 people are substituting at a time, or every 4 or 5 minutes, and the other team
Has to adjust.
has to adjust, and they're seeing a different team, and so the team never plays the same lineup, and and we just did that because we're trying to get the playing times to work out. And at one time, we got a lot of criticism because people would say, "Well, you've got guards playing and."
Right.
What?
You have either too many or not enough tall people in the game.
Right.
At the same time.
Well, what Carlos did is he worked his way out of the finishing 5,
Right.
and he worked his way back into the finishing 5 by stopping the turnovers.
Right.
The whole time we did this, I was in my 40s. So if I'm in the finishing 5, it's not a very competitive team. I don't want to be in the finishing 5. I want to be the thing. But at the middle of that season, I was in the finishing 5. And to my credit, when we were doing the Winder Barrow team, I think by the end of the season with the young guys on there, I was always the last person.
You were always, yeah, but you were still, the reason you were, but you were still playing at your .35 or
Well, no,
whatever. I mean, something like that. But
0.28
around there.
Yeah.
You're
What happens-
around there, but what happened
If I was the worst player on the team, we're a pretty good team.
not being in, if you're .28 or .3 or something like that, and
Yeah.
you're not in the finishing 5, that means everybody else has improved their game.
That's right. And we saw it again and again that people would improve their game. So the rotation system, people are motivated by how many minutes they play. These kids would look at their ratings, and I'd say that the 2 ones that stood out the most was Carlos, how much he transformed his game, and Ryan,
And Ryan.
the coach's son.
Right, yeah.
Ryan was this guy that could he was like 5'9", 5'10",
Something like that.
but he could grab the rim, and he had great springs, and he could finish at the basketball, the hoop,
Took the ball to the hole very well.
very, very well. Unfortunately, we had a ton of guys on our team that shot a lot of three-pointers, and he wanted to be one
He
of
wanted
them
to
too.
be one of the guys.
Yeah. So he'd shoot these three-pointers, and we had great three-point shooters on our team, but nobody could take the ball to the hole like Ryan. And Ryan worked his way into about 6th or 7th place on the team, but by the end of the season, he was in what place? 4?
It was,
He was a
fourth.
fishman.
Yes, fourth, I think.
Fourth place. Because what he did is he started taking the ball to the hole.
Right.
All the
and
time.
he would score a bit, but the other thing that would do is when he took the ball to the hole and he saw that it was clogged, he would get an assist.
Yeah, he would
He
pass.
gave me many good passes after
Many
he
good
took
passes.
the ball to the hole.
That's right. So we liked Ryan. So Ryan's
Yeah.
game really came out. So here are the things that was causing the rotation system to really elevate the play of people. First of all, people are motivated. The people that wanted to be in the finishing five are motivated to raise their game, to get a higher metric number, and that means they're playing better basketball. The second thing was people like myself who were not in the finishing five, I know I'm getting 14 minutes. I'm going to make the most of my 14 minutes. So the way I played, I led the league in charges taken. I was really proud of the fact that I took 11 charges one season, which was more than one per game.
Yeah.
And then the refs started getting on me there. They would take perfect charges and call them blocking fouls.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but referees in our leagues, you know,
Well, let's not say anything bad
we're
about
not
refs.
we're not. Let's just say they were not highly motivated to call fouls.
I wrote a paper out there that's somewhere out there if you go find it. When we try to explain why did we win so much using the rotation system, well, I think one of the things is by not having your five best players on the court at the same time, people are more patient with the shots. I think there were times when we had, there's only one person can be shooting the ball at a time.
Right.
So if you have four scorers, there will be people pushing the ball and taking shots that they probably shouldn't be taking just because they want their share of the shots. But when you're only playing three of your best five players at any one time, you've always got two role players in there, and the role players are playing differently. The role players know they're not there to finish the game. The role players, if they're like me, figure out that their job is to
Get the ball to the scorers.
yeah, get the ball to the scorers, set the picks, take the charges, hustle for rebounds, take a good shot. Well, if it's a good shot for you, go ahead and take it. But we're not. I averaged like 2.5 points per game. I knew scoring was not my. I was always on team with a lot of scorers.
Yeah. Another thing is if you have four scorers in the game,
Yeah.
at in a 5-minute or a 6-minute period or something like that, probably wasting at least one of them.
That's right. You're going to waste at least
We're
one.
wasting at least one of them because there's only one ball.
Yeah. So what
And not
happens
everybody can shoot it.
is people. It's a crazy thing because it's almost when you put the players out there, it's almost like the really good players. I don't know what it is, but they behave better.
What they
When
do, and the thing is, okay, and I don't know if you've covered this already,
What?
but when you substitute for one of your top players, you're taking a player out who's probably a little bit tired.
Yeah.
So he's not playing. If you have a .65 player per minute player, and he's toward the end of his time, if he's, especially say he's been playing the entire
10 minutes.
half,
Let's say he played 10 minutes in a
10
row.
minutes, 10 minutes straight.
Well, if he played
okay.
the next 4 minutes, he's probably not going to continue to play at .65.
.65. He's probably going to be around a .4, which would be your average player.
Right. So
Something
you
like
can
that.
substitute an average player and not lose anything.
So you could say you could substitute.
Right.
You could substitute an average player, point in our league, it'd be .35 to 3.4.
Yeah.
You're not losing much, and when you put your starting player, your .65 player, back in, he's likely to be playing at his .65 level again.
That's right. And here's the funny thing is, teams for the most part, we give them if you look at these rotations, I'll put it back up there, you can see the relative level of the play skill level is about the same throughout the whole game until the very end. So the other team develops this mental image of how good you are, and a lot of times they get sloppy. Mm-hmm. They might get an 8-point lead and stuff. They know that they've got more talent than what you're putting on the court, but they're playing their best five players 90% of the minutes. Okay, and they might have an 8-point lead coming into the final 6 minutes, put 90% of their playing time on the same five players, and all of a sudden we come in with our five best players that they haven't seen. A lot of them are more rested than they are, and we start coming back. And then they fall apart.
There's something about having to look over your shoulder.
Yes. And we come back, and we know it, and the confidence that we have that we're going to come back.
Sure.
We think,
we're not
never
out of a game.
We don't ever feel like we're out of a game.
Never out of a game.
And it's a great way. It's kind of like remember
It's
Waddle.
fun.
Remember how Waddle used to the long distance runner from the Olympics?
Yes.
And he would like be in the very last place, and then he would
yeah,
come
he would
with
be
that
at the,
incredible
like
kick.
the very end, and then he would go out. He would go to the outside and all that, but he just had that kick.
He had
that
this
amazing
huge
kick.
finishing kick. So when you play like this, finishing with the best 5 players, the finishing 5, it was like Waddle, the way he ran. We're always gaining ground at the end of the game.
Here's something I wanted to mention that we haven't mentioned yet.
What's that?
Okay. When I was coaching a team, and by I had already done my time coaching, but I agreed to coach the team again and all that. When you use the rotation system, one thing that is really hard is to coach a game while you're playing in a game, to decide who's coming in and who's coming out at different times and all that. It's hard. It's a very hard thing to do. Okay, using the rotation system, the people who are watching the times to come in and out are the people on the bench, and they are highly motivated to do so.
Right. And
And you don't have to. The rotations are all decided.
Right.
I don't have to make a decision. They don't have to say that oh, you didn't play me, or you don't take yourself out much. This kind of thing.
There's no argument.
There's no argument.
The wonderful thing about it is the arguments over playing time were non-existent.
I mean, I was with the rotation system. I was coach basically in name only, and just the thing that if there's a dispute, then the referees come to me and that kind of thing. But I think it would be good for, say, a high school coach. I mean, a high school coach, I guess, could put his own thought into it. But it's a great way to coach, and it's motivational to your players, not only your starting 5 to keep themselves in the we come up with the finishing 5. The starting 5 is not. The concept of the starting 5 is kind of made obsolete by this.
Well, if you look at the some of the pros, like Manu Ginobili used to come off the bench, but he was one of the 3 best players.
Sure.
Tony Parker, Tim
Yes.
Duncan, and Manu Ginobili. So a lot of players, James Harden when he played with Oklahoma City,
Yes.
6-man award.
That's true.
Well, why do you have to put James Harden in with Kevin Durant with Russell Westbrook? Why do you have to play all 3 of those guys at the same time? Well, they didn't have to play them all 3 at the same time.
Right.
But you finish with them. You'll find them all on the court at the end of the game.
At the end of the game.
Some people are already doing something similar. But I'll say this about I had a coach in a little small middle Georgia that used it. A couple people that used it. But he had a political situation. He didn't have that strong a team. And if you don't have a strong team, people are going to chew you up if you're not winning. Doesn't matter whether the rotation or you're not using the rotation, you see. And so people would dog him. Parents would dog him because he actually kind of used the rotation and the skills. And I know he was getting dogged, and I don't know if he kept with it because it's a highly political system,
That's true.
But on the other hand, Harry Trippett had a wife. She didn't use the metric to seed the players, but she copied our rotations, and she won a Georgia Gainesville, like Class 4A high school championship.
Girls basketball high school championship.
And according to Harry, who used to be married to her, that she was using the rotations. So, but substituting, I loved one thing is we'd substitute 3 players. And we might call a timeout, but a lot of times there'd be a dead ball foul. So when it says, the substitution interval is at 14 minutes,
right.
If there's a dead ball foul within 20 seconds of 14 minutes, we're going to go in.
That will go in, right, yeah.
And if you go a half minute past, we're going to call timeout,
Right.
to make it. So usually half of these intervals were on timeouts, half of them were dead ball for the most part. Actually, 2/3 of them probably dead ball.
Right. Most of them were dead balls. I mean, if it came in and there was like 10
Yeah.
seconds more, they'd
Right.
come in, or
Right.
10 to 20 seconds after, anything
Right.
around the time.
And so when we substitute the people in there, we're bringing 3 people. We know how we're going to play. People shift positions. There's usually one person that might be, like I would play power forward, even though I'm 5'10", because I wasn't quick enough in my 40s to stay with the guards. But I was strong enough to push on people. And if
Box
people,
them out.
Yeah, box them out. I could box people off and keep them off the boards.
You were probably per minute you were a second best rebounder, right?
Well, actually, Jeff was our best rebounder, and he got more rebounds than the next player, twice as many rebounds per minute. But our next 3 players, Adam and Brandon and me and Cody, were all virtually the same rebounding per minute.
Equaling per minute.
And those guys are all taller than me and young and can jump.
Yeah.
But we had a 6'3" guy on our team at one time that was not a good rebounder. And guess what? he moved way down the thing and stopped coming out to the team.
Stopped coming. He stayed outside the 3-point line and didn't make many of them, as I recall.
He didn't want to mix it up, and so yeah, he could dunk the ball.
Yeah.
He had great hops, but guess what? But I had a higher metric, and on measuring the stats, I had a higher metric. So
right.
he wound up. Some people leave the team. When they leave the team, we have a better team.
Sure.
That's the way it happened.
You take somebody who's the low end there that lets somebody more deserving have more playing time.
Yeah. Well, maybe we've beaten to death this.
I think so.
Rotation.
Maybe,
we might have beaten the rest.
Anyway, I'm a big fan of it. It's a great way to coach. It's a great way to motivate your team.
Now I've shown you some rotations. You can make your own rotation. The only keys to the rotation are you really want to give people breaks at some point in time. You want to give people more playing time, and the key here is finishing with the best 5 players. But you can make up anything. It's like this is a 9-man rotation, and I think if you look at some other papers on the web, you can find some other ones.
Right.